Ladies and gentlemen, it is a Saturday morning at the time of this recording, but you are listening to Brandon's World here on this Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. And this, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, is what we have all been waiting for since the NFL season ended on February 12th, 2023. That is my early initial 2023 NFL predictions. Of course, NFL free agency is over with. The draft is over with. Now we know the schedule is out, which absolutely, by the way, is game-changing for a couple of teams. The schedule does matter. If you don't think playing in Philadelphia in December versus September, or playing in New Orleans in that dome and the rowdy environment in December or September, or playing against, the Jets, the Giants, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, late in the year versus early in the year matters for a team specifically like the New York Jets, who would rather face, obviously, a high-powered offense later in the year than early in the year, trying to get Aaron Rodgers implemented into the offense. It is absolutely a big deal. It's not who you play. It's when you play them and where are you playing them at. That is why the NFL makes such a big deal out of their schedule. And as you guys know, this is one of my favorite days and stretches and weeks of the year. The NFL schedule release and going through the entire regular season and postseason slate, predicting early season standings, which I'm going to do. I'm going to go through all of the divisions today. I'm not going to go through it game by game. I do that in August when I make my final predictions. I come on here, of course. I live stream it. I go game by game, and I give you guys my thoughts about each game in real time. Today, I'm just going to give you guys the records of the teams for standings, AFC East through the NFC South, and then I'm also going to give you my best over-under bets. These are going to be my initial best bets of the 2023 NFL season, and they have to do with over-under totals. And these are games that I would bet on right now. And I'm also going to give you, by the way, week one of my best bets already, because, of course, the lines have come out early for all games in the regular season. So without further ado, if you have not already, go down to that description where my Twitter is. It's at @BrandonLewis_7. Please give me a follow. While you're on Twitter, go to @real_B-roll. That is the official Twitter of this show. Give that a follow. You can listen to this podcast on all audio platforms or video on YouTube. We are sponsored by what is formerly known as Anchor, now known as Spotify for podcasters. We are in collaboration with the one and only Voltage Live. And now, whether you are listening on audio or whether you are watching me right now on YouTube in my beautiful, nice white t-shirt, and I'm recording this again on a very comfortable Saturday morning. I've been looking forward to this recording since the end of the 2022 NFL season, when Carl Shepard arguably screwed my Philadelphia Eagles out of the Super Bowl. Here we go. These are my 2023 NFL predictions. We're starting it off in the AFC East, where I believe the Buffalo Bills are going to win the division at 13-4. The Miami Dolphins will come in second at 12-5. The Jets will be the last wild card team standing at 11-6. And then New England comes in way in the bottom. Get this, at 4-13. You will notice as we go through every single team, my theme is going to be ranking teams in the division for the most part. There are some things that have to do with coaching, which is why if it's close with quarterbacks, I will put the team with a better coach, maybe, with a lesser quarterback. But for the most part here, I'm ranking these teams based on the quarterback. Everybody who thinks Buffalo is going to fall off does not understand the importance of what Von Miller did last year for the Bills defense. Von Miller was their pass rush. The Bills were a different team last year without Von Miller on the field. With him healthy, it sounds like Sean McDermott, who again, I still don't know about him as a head coach. He's a defensive head coach, but it does sound like they're going to trust the offensive line. It does sound like, they signed Damien Harris at running back. Sounds like they're going to run the football a little bit more, take a little bit less pressure off of Josh Allen. And they drafted Dalton Kincaid, the first round tight end out of Utah with Dawson Knox. Sounds like they're going to do a lot more 12 personnel, which is, of course, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, as opposed to 11 personnel, which is, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 back. I'm very excited for this Buffalo team. I think that they have a lot of motivation. I think that they are still the best team in the division. Though right behind them, and you'll notice all of these standings for me are pretty much based off of guys like Tua playing 17 games, Lamar Jackson playing 17 games, Jalen Hurts playing 17 games, etc., even though they have missed some time in the past due to injury. If the Dolphins are healthy, they are the second best team in this division. I think Josh Allen over Tua, even though Tua played in an MVP-like performance, again, after being a bust under Brian Flores in Miami, Mike McDaniel comes in last year 1, completely changes Tua. They have the likes of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Now, they did lose Mike Gesicki, which concerns me a little bit. But they are absolutely loaded, especially in the defensive end where they acquired Jalen Ramsey from the Rams, a shutdown corner there, opposite of Byron Jones. There's still Jalen Thompson there as well. So their secondary mixed with new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, who's going to play a lot of soft zone. Don't give up the big play. I think Vic Fangio is a very good, I don't think he's a great, but I think he's a very good defensive coordinator. Dolphins stay healthy all year. They are right there with the Bills. The Jets. I have been saying all year, even with Aaron Rodgers, I'm not sure that this is a playoff team. I do think at 11-6, they could sneak in the last part of that wild card scenario. You'll see as we go through the AFC standings here, we know how tough the AFC is. I believe there are 4 locks to make the playoffs, and then there are like 5 or 6 teams that are going to be battling for 3 spots. I think the Jets are only one of those teams, and their early schedule is brutal. Starting off against Buffalo, which I know it's in New York. I know it's on 9/11. I know it's Aaron Rodgers' debut. We know how these things usually happen. The Jets are going to start off slow. That's going to be a loss. They play Dallas. Now that is in Dallas. Again, Aaron Rodgers owns the Cowboys, but in Dallas, the Jets don't have a lot of great weapons unless Allen Lazard, Garrett Wilson, and those guys truly pop. There's a lot of young guys in there, and of course the veteran Randall Cobb as well. I like the Jets' weapons. I don't love them. I think they start off slow. I do think that they beat New England because, as you'll see, New England easily has the worst quarterback in the division. I'm not sure New England even wins a game in the division. The great Bill Belichick is a defensive mastermind, but in today's NFL, you got to be able to score points. And New England lost Jacoby Myers, and I have no idea who the hell they're going to throw the football to. So, I could see the Jets winning there, but they have Denver in that gauntlet. They have the Chargers, I believe, in there. They have the Eagles in there. So that's a very tough stretch where you could start 2-4 or 1-5. I do think the back half, they have the Giants, that they have the Commanders, they have the Dolphins twice, which they could split with. They have New England again, who I think they can beat. Last game of the year. So there are some soft games in there, but early on, the schedule is brutal, and the NFL put the Jets a lot on prime time. The spotlight may be a little bit too much for these young players early. I think they finish 11-6. They get on a hot run at the end of the year after a slow start, and they sneak into that last wild card spot. With New England, again, 4-13. The quarterbacks they face this year, Tua, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen. That's in their own division. That's already 6 games right away where they don't have a decisive quarterback advantage. Then they take on Pittsburgh. If Kenny Pickett grows, then, potentially, I don't know, any again, Pittsburgh could be better than New England. They certainly have better weapons. Jimmy Garoppolo in Las Vegas, even after the last year's disaster with Mac Jones in the final play of the game and Chandler Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh McDaniels are going to look forward to beating Bill Belichick's New England Patriots. Yes, they drafted Christian Gonzalez, the corner, but are you going to be able to cover, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, the new tight end they drafted, Josh Jacobs? There's a lot of weapons still there for Jimmy Garoppolo to throw to in Vegas. So I'm not even sure that's a win. Then you got to deal with the entire NFC East, where, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, again, decisive quarterback advantages there. I think you could beat the Giants. I think you could beat the Commanders in that NFC East, but that is a daunting gauntlet that New England has to go through, and I'm not sure that they can do it. I know they play the Saints as well out of the NFC South. That's Derek Carr, Dennis Allen, defensive-minded head coach. I think they can win there. You got the Colts at home, which should be a win. So there are some wins there in that schedule, but that is a tough, brutal schedule for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots to have to go through. And so that's why this year I think they're going to be out on Mac Jones. I think they're going to go for a quarterback, and I think they finish 4-13. There's just too many quarterbacks and too many good offenses that Belichick will not be able to stop, as great of a defensive-minded head coach he is. AFC West now, moving on. I have the Kansas City Chiefs winning the division at 13-4. I have the Denver Broncos sliding in behind them at 11-6. I have the Chargers at 9-8, and I have Vegas in last place at 6-11. There's all this talk about Kansas City's brutal schedule, right? Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. We know the opponents they have to face. Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. We know that they have to take on Josh Allen. We know they have to take on Joe Burrow. We know they have to take on Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert. But I will ask you this. Have the Chargers really ever beaten the Chiefs? They've came close a lot of times. The answer has always been really no. We don't trust Brandon Staley as much against Andy Reid. Philadelphia's at home the week before, Thanksgiving. Do we think Kansas City on a Monday night long week to prepare could lose to Philadelphia? Yes, but the likely inclination is no. I think Kansas City, who has to go up against Jacksonville, by the way, and as great as Doug Peterson has been, he's never beaten Andy Reid. So history will tell you Kansas City will win that game. So as much as people want to say, Kansas City's got to play Herbert twice and Russell Wilson twice and, Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, and I believe Tua's in the mix there as well, and Aaron Rodgers as well, Mac Jones in New England. Like, Andy Reid always dominates Bill Belichick. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, that's early, and they get him at home. Miami's a tough game, but it's in London, which I think Kansas City will be prepared for, and who knows if Tua is going to be able to be healthy by that time late in the season. So even though they play a lot of tough quarterbacks, there's a lot of scheduling benefits to that. I have Denver at 11-6. Maybe I'm making a mistake here. I do think the Denver Broncos bounce back with Sean Payton. We know how good of a coach Sean Payton is. I don't think he's necessarily in the echelon that a lot of people think he's in. With that Andy Reid and the Bill Belichick, the top head coaches in the league. But I think he's a very smart, clever offensive coach who will get Russell Wilson back to where he was 2 years ago or even 3 years ago now in Seattle, if he can be fixed. You got a young running back in Javonte Williams. They addressed a lot of the offensive line, including Mike McGlinchey in free agency. You still have Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, all in that Denver wide receiver room. They drafted another receiver as well in the third round. So this offense is loaded. They did trade away Bradley Chubb to Miami, who's, again, another pass rusher for Vic Fangio to use. But their secondary, led by Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons, very good. They can still get after the passer there in Denver. I think Sean Payton is going to turn this team around. This is an example of a team that I don't think is better than the Chargers. I think the Chargers are a really good team, but I don't trust Brandon Staley to be able to outcoach Andy Reid and Sean Payton, which is why the Chargers record for me goes from a potential 10-7, 11-6 down to 9-8. And by the way, 9-8 in the AFC. I know a lot of people think the AFC is going to beat everybody up. I don't think it's necessarily true, though I think it's going to be very close in a lot of these games. And I think that Brandon Staley, even though again they brought in Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator, to try to fix that offense. We saw what Brandon Staley and the Chargers did, blowing that lead at Jacksonville. History says teams don't necessarily bounce back well from that. So my prediction is the Chargers are going to be one of those teams that are going to have high expectations, right? They're going to be 9-7. They're going to be 10-6. They're going to be somewhere around there, 8-8, going into the last couple of weeks of the season. It's going to be on Brandon Staley to win games to get this Charger team to the playoffs. I don't think Denver's going to have a down year again. We know the improvement of the Jets. I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to get hurt at the end of the year for Baltimore again. Deshaun Watson and the Browns are going to be better. So there's a lot of pressure on the Chargers. They have great weapons. They have great talent. They played well at the end of the year last year. They dealt with a lot of injuries. They are a very good football team, but I don't trust their coaching, which is why I have them at 9-8. And Vegas, to me, very respectable 6-11. I love their offensive pieces. They definitely need to rebuild on the defensive end. They picked the long edge out of Texas A&M with the first round pick, and with Max Crosby. They're going to try to have a good pass rush. Though their secondary, I thought they were going to go after the corner, Witherspoon out of Illinois or Gonzalez out of Oregon in the draft. They did not. They went Tyree Wilson, again, out of Texas A&M, which, again, I get it. You need more edge rushers, but they desperately need secondary help. And I'm not the biggest on secondary help, but the Raiders don't really have anybody back there. I think Jimmy Garoppolo will, play well in spurts. I don't know if he necessarily plays the whole year. We know Jimmy's going to get hurt, which I think will bottom out Vegas. At 6-11, I don't know if you move on from Josh McDaniels. I think it depends on how the product looks. But no matter what, just like New England, this is the casualty of having by far, in my opinion, the worst quarterback in your division. AFC North, I got the Bengals at 12-5. I got Baltimore at 11-6. I got the Browns at 9-8, and I have Mike Tomlin with his first ever losing season at 7-10. Once again, for Pittsburgh, they are another casualty. Like, we like them a lot, right? Mike Tomlin, strong-minded defensive coach. Kenny Pickett was playing well at the end of last year. But this is a team, and I really like their draft as well. I thought they upgraded, on the offensive line. I thought they upgraded that wide receiver. But they are still, by far, below Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Cleveland, in my opinion. They will play well in those division games. They'll probably win all three of their home division games. They'll probably lose all three of their road division games. That's the general feel, in my opinion, among all four of these AFC North teams. They sort of split division games because they really are even. The difference here, though, is Cincinnati has Joe Burrow, and Baltimore has a healthy Lamar Jackson with a new offensive coordinator in Todd Monken, Odell Beckham in play, along with various other receivers, including the kid they drafted in the first round, the speedster. So if you ask me, Baltimore, and I say this every year about Baltimore, remember last year, they had like the first 10 games of the year where they had double-digit leads in every single game. That is not a fluke. That's a really good team that melted down at the end of the year. And as I've been saying for months, they didn't have a choice. They had to pay Lamar Jackson. So I think the Ravens bounce back. I don't know if 11-6. I have them right now as essentially tied with the Broncos and the Jets, and they would win those tiebreakers for the 6 and 7 seeds. So that would knock Baltimore out of the playoffs. So again, teams like the Chargers, the Browns at 9-8. I don't think it's going to be good enough to make the playoffs because I think the AFC is so stacked, and we're about to get to the weakest division in the AFC South. But we all know Joe Burrow and the Bengals. We know they're going to be just as good. When you add those offensive weapons, yes, they lost Jesse Bates to Atlanta, but you know what? Having a safety isn't the biggest deal in the world. I think the Bengals are going to be fine. I think Baltimore's going to be fine as long as Lamar Jackson's healthy. The most interesting team in this division to me is the Browns because Kevin Stefanski's on the hot seat. He had such a good year. The first year coming out of COVID, the Browns surprised the league. They made it to the AFC divisional round where they lost to Kansas City. They have not been the same since. They went out, they got Deshaun Watson. Watson now has a whole complement, a whole offseason to throw to the Amari Coopers, the Donovan Peoples-Jones, the David Njokus of the world. You still have that great running game with Nick Chubb. They need to be more pass reliant. They need to be more offensive heavy. Getting Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, a lot like Vic Fangio being the new defensive coordinator in Miami, I think will help. The addition of Za'Darius Smith is a huge addition. If you can find a way to get a constant pass rush outside of Myles Garrett, I think that will help the Browns. But again, a lot like the Chargers with Brandon Staley, are you trusting Kevin Stefanski against John Harbaugh? You're not. Against even a Mike Tomlin, you're not. I know a lot of people don't like Zach Taylor. I like Zach Taylor a lot. I think he's a very smart head coach. There's a reason why they have made back-to-back AFC championship games and a Super Bowl appearance. If it wasn't for a bogus call, the Bengals could have won the Super Bowl a couple years ago against the Rams. So I really like the Bengals. I think they're the best team in the division. Baltimore second, Browns third, Pittsburgh a very tough fourth. This is a brutal division. And again, Mike Tomlin is a defensive-minded head coach. They've upgraded the offensive line. They've given Kenny Pickett some weapons. There is really no excuse outside of this division. It's really tough. And if Pittsburgh can get some more wins against a Watson, if they could sweep a Baltimore, a Cleveland, if they could get to that 8-9 win total and sort of thrust Baltimore down to a 9-win or a Cincinnati, and, if they could beat a New England, if they could beat some of these lesser teams that they're going to go up against in the NFC, if they can beat the Rams, if they can beat the Cardinals, if they can even beat Seattle in Seattle, that could be the difference between them making the playoffs and not making the playoffs. I don't think they can. And so that's why I have them at 7-10. AFC South to me. Jacksonville at 13-4. They're in the weakest division in the conference by far, which means an easy schedule. Yes, they got to go up against Kansas City, but again, it's at home. They do got to play Cincinnati, but again, it's at home. Buffalo is in London, so San Francisco is at home. So their toughest games are all at home, which I think benefits them tremendously. Trevor Lawrence, look out now. Second year in Doug Peterson's system. They added Calvin Ridley on the offense side of the ball via the trade last year, the deadline. He is no longer banned for betting. He is going to be back. I think that this Jacksonville team, year 2 under Doug Peterson, year 3 for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is this year's Jalen Hurts. He's this year's Josh Allen. Trevor Lawrence pops off. Jaguars dominate this division, easily winning at 13-4. Second place, a little bit of a shock to you guys. Maybe I have the Houston Texans. I have them at 7-10. Will Anderson, CJ Stroud, Alabama, Ohio State guys going number 2 and number 3 in the NFL draft. I think they have changed that culture tremendously. They also made some good signings, including Shaq Mason on the offensive line. Dalton Schultz at tight end. They still got some various receivers. I like Jordan Atkinson at tight end as well. Defensively, obviously, they made some signings. They have Devin Singletary in the back end as well. I don't think Houston is going to be complete trash. I think CJ Stroud starts from day one. Again, I'm a little bit concerned with them being a defensive-minded head coach in DeMeco Ryans, but I think he's a very tough guy. He's going to instill that culture, and the Texans, to me, are building something. They played well at the end of last year, even with Davis Mills at the helm and Lovie Smith as their head coach. So I think they win some games. They're not going to be great, but I think they're going to win some games, and they get to 7-10. I'm not expecting Anthony Richardson to start right away for Indianapolis, but you know what? He's got the receiver from Stanford. He's got Michael Pittman. He's got Jonathan Taylor. He's got Quinn Nelson. He's got Shaq Leonard. He still has Kenny Moore. You still have DeForest Buckner. There are elements on this Colts team, and with Shane Steichen now as the new head coach, I think breathing life into Anthony Richardson, who I think starts earlier than later. I think he starts somewhere around week 3, week 4. Indianapolis is a rough, brutal schedule early where they get a deal with, Jacksonville, Baltimore. Now, they're going to lose some games. I think mainly Tennessee, who I don't love this year, and I'll tell you why. But Tennessee always has the Colts number. The Colts seemingly are a team that always seems to struggle in the division. They obviously, as I mentioned, have some tough games. They got to go over to the entire AFC North. So, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. That's not ideal. But I think Indy will still win some games. I don't think that they are a playoff team. But I think Anthony Richardson the next year or two really pops, and this builds the foundation. So I have the Colts, who I think are a respectable 7-10 in Shane Steichen's first year. I like some of their pieces they have. Tennessee, this may be my shock to you all, but I have them finishing last in the division, and I have them finishing 4-13 overall. The same record as New England. I don't like this team at all. Do not like Will Levis playing quarterback. I do not like Derrick Henry being old, and the fact they don't have an offensive line. They do not have any weapons for Ryan Tannehill or Will Levis or Malik Willis, who sounds like he's going to be cut, which to me is a mistake. He has rare running ability in today's NFL, and he needs some offensive weapons. I can't even name you the skill position players, outside of that kid Burks and then Akidi Westbrook-Akide, who can't really separate. Tennessee has no receiving options. Their defense outside of Jeffrey Simmons and Evan Byard are absolute trash. Sounds like they were looking to trade both of them. To me, Tennessee is realizing that, again, last year they started 7-3. They completely collapsed when Ryan Tannehill went down, and that's because teams figured out you cannot win in this league when you don't have wide receivers. They stacked 9-10 of the box. Derrick Henry got hurt. That Tennessee offense was a popcorn offense. It was non-existent. I think this team needs a complete rebuild. I like Mike Vrabel as a tough-minded coach. I'm not sure he's the right coach moving forward for Tennessee. I think you need to tank this year, essentially, for the Tennessee Titans. I think you need to get an offensive-minded head coach. I think you need to trade Derrick Henry, trade an old Jeffrey Simmons, even trade a Kevin Byard, get draft picks, get offensive linemen, get wide receivers. Like you're seeing now, Houston tore it down for a few years. They may have their potential franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud, though I don't think he is. I think Indianapolis has their franchise quarterback they've been waiting for since Andrew Luck with Anthony Richardson eventually. I don't think Tennessee has that guy in Will Levis. Jacksonville has that guy for years to come in Trevor Lawrence, which is why the division is theirs this year. But I think this is a hard year for Tennessee, even that weak division where they could get some wins over Houston and Indy. I don't think they could beat up Buffalo. They couldn't beat a Miami. They couldn't beat a Jets. They couldn't beat a Baltimore, even in London to me. You couldn't beat a Cincinnati, a Cleveland. I'm not even sure you could beat a Pittsburgh with those offensive weapons. So for me, it's going to be a really tough year if you're a Tennessee Titans fan. I think them and New England are defensive-minded teams that we all like their coaching. We like their culture, but they're more old school. They run the football. They don't have a lot of weapons on the offense side of the ball. Their defense is slowly dwindling of talent. And it's a lot of old teams against a lot of dominant quarterbacks in that conference, which if they were in the NFC, they'd win 7, 8, 9 games, but they're not. They're in the AFC, which absolutely knocks them down a couple of picks. So my, AFC predictions here are going to be Buffalo gets the 1 seed via the tiebreaker over Kansas City at 13-4. Kansas City then the 2 seed at 13-4 because Kansas City beat Jacksonville. Jacksonville slides down to 13-4 at the 3 seed. Cincinnati then the 4 seed at 12-5. Those are my 4 locks to make the postseason. That being Buffalo, Kansas City, Jacksonville, and Cincinnati. The other teams in the AFC, your Dolphins, your Jets, your Broncos, your Chargers, your Browns, your Ravens. I'll even throw Pittsburgh into that conversation. Those are teams that to me are battling for 3 wild card spots. And then you have your Indy, your Houston, your New England, your Tennessee, who I don't think have any chance of making the postseason this year. So the way I have it, Dolphins 12-5, Denver 11-6, Jets 11-6, Baltimore just misses out at 11-6 of making the postseason. Chargers 9-8, Browns 9-8 are just not on the same level as a Miami, as a Denver, as a Jets. Again, if all those teams are healthy, I think it's going to be a war at the end of the year, which again may knock some of these win totals down for some of these teams, like a Miami, a Denver, a Jets, and raise the win total of a Chargers, a Browns, to get them from a 9-8 to a 10-7, to an 11-6, to get them in the postseason. But assuming all of these teams are healthy, to me, your top 7 teams in the AFC are, and in no particular order, AFC East, Buffalo, Miami, Jets, AFC West, Kansas City, Denver Chargers, AFC North, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Cleveland, and then the AFC South, then Jacksonville. So that's 10 teams with 7 spots. So we're having a lot of good quarterback play in the AFC, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out. We're going to the NFC, where it's the complete opposite. And starting off in the NFC East, I have the Philadelphia Eagles, who, yes, have the toughest schedule going into the NFL this season. I still think, because of the conference they're in, they're going to be 13-4. Dallas 11-6. Washington 7-10. And yes, folks, the New York Giants, who somehow made the playoffs last year, they are going to go 4-13. I'm going to start with the Giants. I'm going to go the opposite. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. I don't think that they have any legitimate receivers. I realize they have Darren Waller, but this team, 7 of their first 9 games this year are on the road. That is not good for Daniel Jones. The Giants were classic overachievers last year. Saquon Barkley is not going to have the year again that he had last year. This is a Giants team that plummets back down to earth. The Commanders roster actually like more than the Giants. They obviously have a great defensive line. Terry McLaurin is arguably better outside of Darren Waller than any other skill position player on the Giants. You know, they have Curtis Samuel as well. They have Dodson. They have Antonio Gibson. They have Brian Robinson. Offensive line's order suspect, but we know, obviously, they mentioned Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen. They paid Daron Payne a bag, as we know, to come back. I think this team is a little bit of a ceiling with defensive-minded head coach Ron Rivera. Sam Howell, we don't know how he's going to be under new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, but from what I saw last year in just one game against the Cowboys, Sam Howell looked like he could play more than Daniel Jones did at any other previous time outside of Brian Daboll. Now he gets the coaching upgrade with Eric Bieniemy. Again, I think this Washington team has a ceiling, but they're absolutely going to win games. Dallas at 11-6. They're still a very good football team. Yes, they gained Stephon Gilmore as well. Now, yes, they did lose their number 2 receiver, I believe. I don't believe Gallup is there anymore. But Dallas is still, again, a very good team. Ezekiel Elliott is no longer there. Dak Prescott is good. Their defense is still loaded. Dan Quinn is still there, and they're still going to win games, which is why I have them at 11-6 and at 13-4, once again, the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people want to talk about the brutal stretch the Eagles go through, which after the bye week, they have Kansas City on the road. They have Buffalo at home. They have San Francisco at home. They have Dallas on the road, and they have Seattle on the road. Even if you just win your 2 home games, there were Buffalo and San Francisco. If you go 2-3 in that stretch, you're going to be able to survive, because the first half of that schedule at New England, Minnesota, you know, at Tampa Bay, the Commanders, the Jets, the Rams as well in there. So the front half of that schedule is very doable. What I have always gone back to with this Eagles team is the quarterback play of Jalen Hurts. We know the additions in the draft with all the Georgia kids, But Jalen Hurts, outside of when you're playing, maybe a Patrick Mahomes, maybe Josh Allen, maybe, potentially Tua Tagovailoa there, maybe Aaron Rodgers. Like at best, you are even in quarterback play. If Tua's healthy, Tua can play like a top 5 quarterback. So don't give me crap on that. His numbers back it up. Again, I was the biggest Tua hater, but with Mike McDaniel, Tua played an extremely high level last year. But again, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles team, they are motivated. They know how to win with Nick Sirianni. They're going to come out on fire. They will get the number 1 seed once again in the NFC this year. NFC West, I think this is very simple. Niners 13-4, Seattle 9-8, Rams 5-12, Arizona 1-16. Let's start with Arizona. They're going to easily be the worst team in football this year. Kyler Murray's going to come back probably midway through the season. If they're 0-8, I'm not even sure he's going to. I think Arizona, Jonathan Gannon want their own quarterback. They want Drake May. They want Caleb Williams next year. I think Kyler Murray will be playing somewhere else in 2024, and he may have played his last snap in an Arizona Cardinals uniform. I think this team's going to be an absolute disaster. I think they are tanking. I think they're going to get the number 1 pick in this year's draft. Now, the Rams at 5-12, there's a lot of people that think the Rams are going to bounce back. I am not one of those people. Under the Cooper Kupp, they don't have a lot of great offensive weapons, and I don't trust the health of Matthew Stafford, and they have yet to rebuild that offensive line. So even though Sean McVay is a good coach, they dealt with a lot of injuries last year. Their pass rush is not good outside of Aaron Donald. I don't think they're a very good football team, and so that's why I have them at 5-12. I think Seattle, even with the upgrades of Witherspoon and Jackson Smith and Jigba, they are a very basic 9-8, very good at home, bad on the road. Geno Smith plays well, but Seattle is not in the upper echelon of the NFC teams. And by virtue of being in this weak division that San Francisco essentially owns, they get 13-4. Once again, I don't think they're great. I think they're better than Dallas. They're not better than Philly. They're still loaded. Obviously, D'Amico Ryans no longer there as defensive coordinator, but they are still loaded. And whether Brock Purdy or Trey Lance plays or not, their roster is good enough that they can carve up a very bad NFC. Now, the NFC North, I have the Lions winning this division at 10-7. Ahmad St. Brown, and all those weapons they have. They drafted a tight end as well. I didn't get, obviously, the Gibbs draft pick. Yes, they traded away DeAndre Swift to my Philadelphia Eagles, but they did sign David Montgomery. They let Jamal Williams go to the Saints as well. I think the Lions are very good offensively and, defensively. I think they're going to be better like they were at the end of last year. And you can make the argument that Jared Goff is a top 3 quarterback next to Jalen Hurts and maybe Dak Prescott in this conference right now. And again, with a loaded Lions offense, that's how I think they get to 10-7 and win this division for the first time in a long time in Detroit, changing of the guard. Next team at 9-8, I'm going to have the Chicago Bears, and I have banged on Matt Eberflus for 2 years now, but they traded that number 1 pick for DJ Moore, which is going to absolutely change Justin Fields' life. We're going to find out if Justin Fields can play this year, which I believe he can. I think DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, they still have a vast case of running backs. Their defense, we know, is always going to be good. They still have talent there. And I think Justin Fields and the Bears are a potential playoff team this year. They're being so bad. Listen, they spent a lot of money in the offseason on receivers and free agency. They went out, they drafted the tackle, who I would have not drafted, by the way. I would have taken the tackle out of Northwestern. Maybe they have a different ranking there on their board. To play right tackle, they must still like Jenkins at left tackle. So I like the Bears there at 9-8. Minnesota, to me, is one of my biggest pushback teams of this year. Yes, they do have Justin Jefferson. Still don't want their defense. They really didn't do much to upgrade that in the draft. And you can't trust Kirk Cousins in primetime. And they have a lot of primetime games. They will go 8-9. And then Green Bay. who I think will finish this year 6-11. I think they will make a trade in the offseason for a quarterback. Again, whether that's Kyler Murray, who knows? I don't think Jordan Love is the guy. I think Green Bay plummets back down to earth after a solid start. But again, they don't have a lot of great weapons on the outside. They're going to be based on the running game, and I don't think that they are better than Chicago, Minnesota, or Detroit at this point. I think Green Bay, sort of the writing was on the wall last year when they could not beat Detroit at home with Aaron Rodgers. I think they are in. I think this is the start of a Green Bay rebuild, which I think they could turn around quickly if they start drafting some weapons. They did get Jordan Love some tight ends in the draft, but I don't love this team. Obviously, the Smiths are gone. Jaire Alexander is a good corner. I don't know if he's necessarily a great corner anymore, and I just have bad vibes about this Green Bay team. I think they finish 6-11. Now, we get to the NFC South, which I think will once again have a division winner finish under 500. I think it'll be the Panthers. I think that they will win it at 8-9. Bryce Young starts week 1. He pops. He gets better at the end of the year. Frank Reich, offensive coach, will lift up the offensive weapons they do have, which isn't much, obviously, if they trade away DJ Moore. But I am optimistic about the Panthers' future, which I think they spend a lot of money on the next couple of off seasons bringing up Bryce Young and his talent. Number 2, I'm actually going to put Tampa Bay in there at 7-10. A lot of people think Tampa Bay is going to be tanking for Caleb Williams, and I don't think they will. I like Baker Mayfield with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Scotty Miller in this group. Devin White, Shaq Barrett, and those guys at linebacker. I think Tampa Bay is still very good. I think they are a solid team. We're worried about Todd Bowles, defensive-minded head coach. But again, I think Tampa Bay is still solid. Saints at 7-10. I just don't trust Dennis Allen. I don't trust the Michael Thomas. And who knows what the hell is going on with Alvin Kamara. So the Saints to me are that classic average team. If there were 16 games, I'd put them at 8-8. I think they go 7-10 here, even in a bad division. And Atlanta, I don't know if Desmond Ridder can play or not. Yes, they have Drake London. Yes, they have Kyle Pitts. Yes, they made additions on the defense side of the ball, including Calais Campbell and Jesse Bates. Yes, they won 7 games shockingly last year with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder. I don't think that's the case this year. I think Bijan Robinson's a special back, but they already had good running back production. I thought they should have spent that production on the defense side of the ball and the offensive weaponry side of the ball at wide receiver, giving Desmond Ridder some more weapons. But I think Atlanta is going back in the lottery this year, and they will be selecting a quarterback next year. So in the NFC, I have the Eagles at the number 1 seed at 13-4, San Francisco the number 2 seed at 13-4, Detroit the 3 at 10-7. Carolina, the 4 at 8-9, wins the NFC South. Wild cards are Dallas at 11-6, with Chicago at 9-8, with Seattle at 9-8, and those other wild card spots with Minnesota 8-9, sort of creeping on them in the rear view mirror. So again, as opposed to the AFC, where 10 wins may not even get you in the postseason, in the NFC, I think if you get to 8 or 9, especially 9, there's a really good chance you're going to be a playoff team in 2023. Again, all of this is based on offensive-minded football. It's all based off coaching. It's all based off quarterbacks. I really don't care how good your defense is anymore. You have to be able to score points to me. That is the bottom line in today's NFL, which is why I like teams like Dallas, Detroit, Philadelphia, San Francisco. I think those are your top 4 teams. In the NFC, I think all of those are essentially locks to make the playoffs. And then NFC South, I really like Carolina. I think Seattle's another playoff team this year with the upgrades they had. And another wild card spot. If the Rams improve with Matthew Stafford, they could be in there, I guess. But I do really think Justin Fields and the Bears take a leap this year and they get into that playoff spot. My early Super Bowl prediction, if you want to know, I do think we get the Week 11 rematch and the Super Bowl rematch again with Kansas City and Philadelphia. but I'm not that far yet down the road. Before we get out of here with the NFL stuff, I do want to give you my best bets, Brandon's best bets. These are going to be, once again, as I said at the beginning of the show, these are my best over under. So I just went through the entire schedule. I spent about the last hour going through each team, going through their record, my thoughts. So I have 9 teams here that I am very confident right now. If FanDuel or DraftKings or any of those places, if you want to parlay those, you want to put them in separately, a couple at a time, however you want to do it, I'm very confident in these best bets. Number 1, Arizona. Their win total is only 4.5. I am taking the under here. Again, I think at most they win about 2-3 games. I don't think Kyler Murray, they're saying he could be back by week 8 or week 9. They could be 1-7, potentially 0-8. 1-8, 0-9 by that time. Why would you risk bringing back Kyler Murray? I think you're going to go after Caleb Williams. I think you're going to go after Drake May. I think Kyler Murray will be playing in a new city with a quarterback-needy team. I think he needs a new, fresh start and potentially a good place to land for him. For me, could be Tampa Bay. It could be Miami, too. Keep an eye out on Miami if Tua Tagovailoa continues to get hurt. Number 2, I have Atlanta. I would give the under for Atlanta at 5-12, and their over-under is at 8.5. So I would easily take the under on this. Again, I don't think Desmond Ridder's the guy, and you can make an argument. They have the worst quarterback in the division. To me, there's no way that they get to 9 wins, which is why this is a safe under bet for me. Buffalo, they are at 10.5. So if they hit 11, which I think is their ceiling, I think at the least they win 11 games, is why I would bet the over. Again, I have them at 13-4. Dallas is at 9.5. Again, I think there's no way in that crappy NFC where they have at the worst the 3rd best quarterback to me in the conference. There's no way they don't get 10 wins again. So I would give Dallas the over at 9.5. Jacksonville to me is easy, bet the over. They're going to get at least 5 wins in their division. Their over-under is 9.5, which means they would only have to go 5-7 the rest of the way. With Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson and that easy schedule, they're going to take advantage of it. That's one of the best bets on the board. Take the over. New England is 7.5. This is easily the under. At most, they're going to win 6-7 games. I don't see any way in hell when you got to face Kansas City, when you got to face Buffalo, when you got to face Miami, when you got to face the Jets. That's 6 games right there. If you include Kansas City, that's 7. Then they also, I believe, underface the entire AFC West. So Chargers, Denver, Vegas, like Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson. You're not beating those teams with Mac Jones. So this is an easy under with the New England Patriots. Now, the New York Giants, I already said it, they're the biggest pullback team in the league. Daniel Jones, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. There's no way they get to 8 wins. I have them going 4-13. This is an easy under 7.5. Philadelphia's over-under set at 10.5. Even with that hard schedule towards the back half, there's no way. At the very floor, this team is going 11-6, I believe. So 10.5, you can confidently bet the over on the Eagles. And again, Tennessee 7.5 at most. Like New England, they're going to win 7 games, which I don't think they're even going to get to. So you can bet the under on Tennessee. I don't think Will Levis is going to pop. They don't have any offensive weapons outside of Derrick Henry, who's going to be broken down by the end of the year. So Arizona, 4.5, take the under. Atlanta, 8.5, take the under. Buffalo, 10.5, take the over. Dallas, 9.5, take the over. Jacksonville, 9.5, take the over. New England, 7.5, take the under. Philadelphia, 10.5, take the over. And Tennessee, 7.5, take the under. We're going to have all this laid out for you in graphics. I'm going to have a tier list for teams as well. So we're gonna have this all posted for social media. You can check out my personal Instagram as well at LewisBrand25. I sometimes post on there. I'm gonna have all those graphics on there as well that you can follow me. I'm gonna post it on my community tab as well. So you're gonna get to see all this. But again, I thank you guys for spending about an hour with me today as we go over these NFL predictions. My favorite part of the year. I'm confident on those 9 over/under bets. And I think we're going to have a really fun, exciting NFL season. I'm fascinated by the way the schedule works. You know, nobody realizes the time they put it in the schedule, whether it's conflicts with the arena, conflicts with other teams in the same city, conflicts with networks where CBS wants to protect games and Fox wants to protect games. You're going to have CBS, the national window 1 week, Fox, the national window the other week. So the schedule is very complicated. It takes the NFL between 4 and 5 months to figure it out. I love doing it myself every single year and comparing it. And I think it's one of the most fascinating things to do in life is to break down the NFL. My favorite sport. I absolutely love it. You like that clip from the Brand Sports Podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand Sports Podcast right here on YouTube.